Introduction to Family Communication. According to Families First, Keys to Successful Family Functioning Communication by Peterson et al., published in 2009, family communication is the way verbal and nonverbal information is exchanged between family members. Emily, Phoebe, Jalen, and I have researched family communication extensively to accurately depict this subfield of communication. Family communication has history, major players that it was built upon, as well as theories, critiques, and potential direction for future research. I will inform you of the history and main players of communication. Phoebe will cover two theories that are foundational to the subfield. Emily Rock will cover the critiques that family communication has faced, and Jalen Thomas will inform you of the direction family communication is headed in reference to future research. Now let's talk about family communication. The history of family communication is very interesting and how it came about. Galvin's journal article titled Family Communication Instruction, A Brief History and Call, published in 2001, states the subfield of communication is an extension of interpersonal communication, as it focuses on communication between people. This subfield of communication was warranted because interpersonal scholars wanted to focus in on ongoing and long-term relationships like marriages or families. Galvin also goes on to acknowledge that family communication was highly influenced by family therapy. We have Gregory Bateson's Palo Alto study that led scholars to look into family interactions and treatments. Then by the 1960s, there were instructional programs dedicated to preventing marital and family crisis through effective communication. By the late 1970s, scholars began to focus on functional families and examined what an everyday family would function like. She also notes the formal recognition of family communication that came in the mid-1970s thanks to Arthur P. Bochner's 1974 publication titled Family Communication Research. There was a lack of research in the area of families, and Bochner's article was enough to credit the subfield's existence. Then the first published curriculum appears in Goldberg and Goldberg's 1976 article titled Family Communications. It describes the development of their family course and the growing interest in family communication. Now let's talk about the major players of family communication. We have Gregory Bateson. He did the Palo Alto study for families, and he employed the double-bind communication paradox, which led to people focusing on familial interactions. Then we have Arthur P. Bochner. He was the one that established formal recognition of family communication, and that led to a curriculum being created off the basis of family communication. Then there was Judy Hiller Goldberg and Alvin A. Goldberg, who described the development of their family course, and they basically stated that there was a growing interest of family communication. They proposed many reasons of speech scholars to study family communication, and this is how we ended up with family communication as a subfield. Now, Phoebe will go on to explain two models or theories that are important when looking at family communication.
I'm going to be speaking about family development theory. So the family development theory focuses on the systematic and pattern changes experienced by families as they move through their life course. The term family here is used and described by a social group with at least one parent and one child. This theory states that a family will move from one stage to the next after all members successfully master the task within a stage. The different stages are 1. Married couple without children. The tasks are navigating how to live together and adjusting to combined families. 2 is childbearing families with the oldest child being between birth and 30 months of age. The tasks are preparing and adjusting the family system to accommodate children and learning the roles of parenthood. 3 is families with preschool children. The tasks are socializing, educating, and guiding the children and adjusting parenting roles as children age and families grow. 4 is families with school-age children. The tasks are providing guidance to children while collaborating with outside resources. And 5 is family with adolescents. The task are parents provide more independence within safe limits to the children. 6 is launching families, also known as first to last child leaving home. The tasks are navigating adult-to-adult relationships with children, resolving midlife issues, and caring for aging family members. 7 is middle-aged families, also known as empty nest and retirement. The tasks are to adjust to being a couple without children living at home and caring for aging family members. And 8 is aging families, also known as retirement until death of both spouses. This is the last step, and the tasks are learning new life roles related to retirement, becoming grandparents, losing a partner, and health-related issues. One study posted in 2002 by the National Council on Human Relations argued against the family development theory. They stated that the family development theory has made significant contributions to the field of family study, but all models based on this theory are fraught with two fundamental weaknesses, being the assumption of universality and the skew towards a single generational focus. The main purpose of this study was to challenge the family developmental theory by arguing that a new theory called the systemic family developmental model is more accurate in describing most modern families. It is stated that the systemic family developmental model is a process-oriented and holistic alternative to the existing family development model. Through studies in families through the years, the argument held strong that the family development theory was outdated and not always accurate for the different cultures. The next theory I'm going to be speaking about is family communication patterns theory. Family communication patterns theory focuses on family communication habits that develop in childhood and that can continue to have an effect on individuals into adulthood. The theory states that there are two orientations that family orientation can be understood: conversation orientation and conformity orientation. The idea is that the way families communicate create a shared reality or view of the world, and this allows families to function. Conversation orientation is focused on how often the family communicates and how open they are with each other. The idea is that if you grew up in a family that openly communicates feelings and issues, you're more likely to do so as an adult within your own family relationships. Conformity orientation is focused on the expectations by the parents for the children to follow the values and beliefs of the parents. It is believed that when these two orientations meet, they create a scale where 4 different family types are created. The 4 family types are consensual, pluralistic, protective, and laissez-faire. The consensual family type scores high in conversation orientation and also high in conformity orientation. These families tend to have open and frequent conversations, but the parents are the primary decision makers. Protective families score high on conformity orientation, but low on conversation orientation. These families tend to not communicate openly with children, and parents expect them to follow rules without question. Pluralistic families are high on conversation orientation, but low on conformity orientation. These families have open and frequent conversations, and the children are typically not required to follow parents' rules or follow their beliefs. The laissez-faire families are low on conversation orientation and also low in conformity orientation. These are also more rare out of the 4. Communication within these families are typically non-existent, and there is no expectation for following beliefs or values of the parents. An article was posted in 2011 by the National Library of Medicine discussing the associations between the family communication patterns, sibling closeness, and adoptive status using the family communication patterns theory as a guide. The family communication patterns theory was used as they tested the association between family communication and sibling emotional and behavioral closeness, and whether adopted status moderated the relationship. The study was done by studying 606 adoptive and non-adoptive families and 2 adolescent children. The hypothesis was tested by using structural equation modeling, and the conclusion was that sibling closeness was highest in families that emphasized both conversation and conformity, and lowest in families that emphasized only conversation or neither conversation nor conformity. Emotional and behavioral closeness were differently associated with adoption status, sibling age, and sibling gender. Few moderating effects on adoption status were found. The next speaker is going to be Emily, and she is going to be speaking about the critiques. Thank you.
Now let's talk about critiques of family communication. An area for improvement is communication. Many families lack communication and it can be negative and problematic. We can improve by discussing our thoughts, feelings, and needs. We should ask more open-ended questions to go more in depth with people's feelings. We can practice our listening skills to understand and interpret.
Directions for the future research. Where can or should communications research in the subfield go in the future? It should go in everyday talk. It should be told more to people than families, so everybody get to hear it. Also, telling stories can help people's future so they won't mess up. What I mean by that is tell people the story so they won't mess up. Like, for instance, say the right thing and stuff. Don't mess them up. Don't like have people go the same mistakes. Like a story about telling someone about robbing a bank and seeing like if they rob the bank and stuff, they go to jail. Tell a story so they don't rob the bank, so they don't have to go to jail. So they can learn from the future, from past mistakes, so they won't make the same mistakes in the future. What areas should be studied next? How can this discipline move forward? Stories should be recorded by video or written down. It should also teach a lesson to understand something they deal with. So, as if they're dealing with like growing up and like smearing hormones and stuff like that, there should be a story that can like tell them like what to do during this time and stuff, and what your body going through. That's what I mean by that.
Overall, family communication is important regarding families. There are many things one can learn from family communication to better improve their familial connections. The history of family communication is interesting as it has many influences from interpersonal scholars and family therapy. It has been given its own curriculum even. There are many aspects that are interesting to this subfield of communication as seen throughout this presentation. There's been the coverage of many topics such as history, foundational theories or models, critiques, and the direction of future research regarding family communication. Communication is very important overall, especially with the ones you are closest to.